Welcome to the Spoiler Alert podcast. And today we're going to be reviewing Jacob's Ladder. And this is a part of our Halloween marathon. Throughout the month of October, we're going to be releasing reviews of horror movies or semi-horror movies, or movies that just give a Halloween vibe that might not qualify as horror. But today we're going to be reviewing the psychological thriller / horror film from 1990, Jacob's Ladder. It was directed by Adrian Lyne, and it stars Tim Robbins. And then Adrian Lyne, I was looking through, I didn't actually search through too much of his stuff until today. He's got a pretty decent enough career. He's directed.
After Unfaithful, he hasn't really done anything though. So
it was just empty after that. But like you said, he did Unfaithful. He did Fatal Attraction. He did Flashdance. So kind of all over the place, but kind of like the Femme Fatales.
Yes, psychosexual thrillers and stuff like that.
So the film Jacob's Ladder begins in a Vietnam camp, or at least it looks like a Vietnam camp. These soldiers are tired. We assume they've been walking around. They look like shit. They're joking around for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, mortars, they hear that someone's attacking and they kind of go crazy. They're launching mortars and it looks like hell. And then out of nowhere, a lot of them just have these seizure looking things or are spinning around, going literally going fucking crazy. It just goes to shit. And then we see Tim Robbins get bayoneted by someone. And then he wakes up and it's a dream. And we see that throughout this movie a lot, is he's waking up and it's a dream a lot.
Right. Hugely disorienting. And so that like you said, throughout the whole film. Then he wakes up on a subway train. I'm assuming this is, I think, the 70s. So it's a really shit looking subway train. Not like, nowadays, I guess they're all clean and, whatever. But back then they look like shit. So this one certainly does.
And he and we're starting to see him have these weird kind of hallucinations, I guess you'd call them, where he looks at this homeless dude and so I don't know how much I'm going to keep about this description, but see, to me it looked like a weirdly deformed dick. And then I looked on Wikipedia and they called it specifically a weirdly deformed testicle.
Testicle?
Yeah.
That's what they called it? All right.
So
I thought it was just a tail or something. I mean, I didn't. Okay.
It looked staff-like to me, so I thought it was the dick.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was a tail, but all right.
We see deformity.
It's unpleasant looking in any case.
We see a really unpleasant looking deformity on a homeless man between his legs.
Yeah.
It's
and before, I mean, he doesn't even really know what he's seen, because the train starts to take off and he just caught it on his way out the door, so before he can really get a second look, the train takes off. And then he finds that he's locked in the subway station. So he's trying to find a way out for a while. Eventually he realizes he's going to have to cross the tracks. At which point, in pretty much pitch black, in the pitch black. And then, as you might expect, a train starts to come. He dodges out of the way at the last minute. We see, kind of reminds me of an image from Pink Floyd's The Wall. I'm trying to think, there was some scene with a train. Anyway, but I don't know. We see a bunch of people with I don't know. You can't make out their faces, but they're all staring out the windows at him. The soundtrack. I'm trying to think of who did it, but it gets stuck in my head all the time.
That's
But yeah, some really eerie music there. But
yeah, the music's done by Maurice Jarre. I didn't know that. I just Googled it, so I'm not
okay.
gonna fake that in the edit.
No, it's okay. But yeah, oh yeah, that kind of brings something up though. I mean, so there is like this kind of, I mean, eerie music that plays over that scene, but I think something that's kind of interesting that the movie does is like, uh, you don't have a musical cue during a lot of the scares. It goes, like, oh, here,
Yeah.
you're supposed to jump. And I think it's really like, I don't know.
They sneak up on you
wanna,
more, honestly.
What's that? Well, yeah, right. Because I mean, well, you kind of have the reaction that the character does, where you're like, I mean, you don't even quite know what you've seen, and then, it also kind of just makes it feel really, like isolative. I don't know how to put it. Because I mean, nobody's seeing what he's seeing, and then I think people rely on like a musical cue in a movie to kind of like tell them what to feel, what to think.
Mhm.
Like kind of like like how people laugh along at jokes and they don't even really get them, like, but they just,
Yeah.
there's everybody else is laughing, they go with it. And I think movies work that way. So like when you take that out and you kind of just leave the audience, it takes them a second to really process what they're actually even looking at, which, and then once they realize it, I think it makes it a bit more disturbing.
It puts you a little bit more in his shoes, I think, because it's
Right.
like in a weird roundabout way, because he doesn't know what to make of like most of what's going on in his fucking reality at this point.
Right. Like what sticks out to me is probably the dance floor scene where you have that was that Voulez-vous coucher, I think, what is going, and like, but he's just getting hit with these flashes of like really horrific, imagery, and it's I again, because there's no shocking musical, in fact, this music that's totally playing against the tone of that scene, like it makes him feel very alone in that crowd. And then that's something that's expressed by one of his comrades later in the film, that he can't go to his sisters because nobody's gonna, there's just nobody he can tell. I mean, he knows how crazy it sounds, and so
Okay, we see him get back from the subway, takes a shower with his girlfriend. It's kind of hot. And then
yeah, Elizabeth Pena, I think she was in La Bamba. I haven't really seen her in anything else, but she died a few years ago. She got cirrhosis.
Really?
But yeah, but so she plays the girlfriend, because then later there's the wife. I don't know who plays her, but her name's Sarah. So you're kind of going back and forth between those two as the movie goes on. So yeah, there's a difference between the girlfriend and the wife, just so people don't get confused later
and
on.
her
Yes.
and Pena's character's name is Jezebel, goes as Jez, so we'll call her
Right.
Jez.
Uh,
And Jez is like this really warm character. Like it's weird because he has very warm people around him. He has Jez, he has Danny Aiello's character, who's the chiropractor, and just like very warm, like nurturing characters.
I mean,
And that kind of plays in later because like there's a little bit of sinisterness to their characters, but
well, at least
I think
to
their
Jezebel.
characters are more well defined later on in the film by a couple of quotes that we'll bring up.
Yeah.
The next morning, Tim Robbins' character, Jacob, is looking through old pictures of his wife. His one of his sons who died is played by Macaulay Culkin.
I think this is his first ever film credit, I think.
First, it would be right on the line with Home Alone, I think, because I think Home Alone would have been 91 and then this would have been 90. Yeah, could be. Looking at the picture of his son makes him cry. Jez wants no part of his past. She wants him to forget about it, so she burns his pictures.
Yeah, she kind of ends up being, I mean, I don't think I'm getting too ahead. I mean, kind of like the archangel character from The Last Temptation of Christ, where like, yeah, things that make him cry, or things that, she just wants him to, I mean, as the movie progresses and he becomes more unstable and preoccupied with these visions he's seeing or whatever, she's the one that keeps wanting him to drop it and keeps kind of, I think, trying to distract him with, I mean, keep him away from those things, I guess, which is pretty extreme, burning all those pictures, I mean, family pictures. But one of his kids dropped him off because, he has two others that are alive. And then he's obviously, I'm trying to think.
He
I
was
think
divorced.
Yeah, was he? Okay, they're not just separated. All right, yeah. So that's, yeah. So now he's living with his girlfriend from the post office where he works. I think that's our next scene. So
Yeah, we see them at the post office. They have like coworker relationships are super tricky, as more so these days than before. But either way, they could be super tricky. But that one seems kind of neat, where it's like he delivers the mail, she sorts it. They have their time apart, and then they can have their time together and not just be with each other 24/7, 365 until they hate each other, like a
right.
lot of work relationships go sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an aside. And the next scene we get is we meet the chiropractor, played by Danny Aiello. He actually recently died too, unfortunately. And damn, so did his son. And
that sucks.
Yeah, and so Danny Aiello was in, I think, most well known for it being in Do the Right Thing.
Right.
And his son was actually in Do the Right Thing too. I didn't know that until his son.
Did he
died.
actually play his sons in the movie? Like
no, his son actually played the worst cop.
Oh, the one that strangles Radio, is it? Or
Radio Raheem, yep. But the chiropractor, he's like just this really warm friend. He's got like this New York accent where, kind of, and it's kind of like that I suppose like New York accents could sound super comforting or super uncomforting, like sure. Anything else. But like when they're comforting, it's almost like, I don't know, it's just very like fatherly or something. And
right. It's not harsh like
right. And he's like basically working out his back, and he's like, all right, we got it. And then Jake was like, said something along the lines of, did I ever tell you look like an angel sometimes?
Yeah.
So you tell me that every
time
you come around. Because you got
the light, behind him and everything, So yeah, it is. Yeah, he's a very warm presence, like you said in the film. So
yeah, and that's just like, what you alluded to about Jez being an angel. He's got these angels in his life, and everything else around those is kind of hazardous. You know what I mean?
I guess it's relevant at the end of the movie, but yeah, in that scene with Louis, he's got like a medical lamp, there, like, and that's what's casting kind of this halo behind him. But there's a scene at the very end where we see that lamp, so I think that's cool that elements of, I'm trying to say this without spoiling the movie too, but of reality are slipping into this. I don't know how to say that. Right.
Yeah. So, and then soon after this, he gets a flashback of like looking through the trees and like some helicopter sounds and things like that. And we're kind of meant to believe that it's like right after he got bayoneted in the gut.
Yeah, and there's this pretty image. I don't know if there's any significance to it other than it's pretty, just of like a spider web with, bits of like, I mean, I don't know, it's just very well shot, very as horrible as what's happening is.
Spiderweb might have, I don't know, some kind of symbolic theme, symbolic meaning to the overall theme. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Maybe not totally, but like, he is kind of stuck in this in-between place, where he's not alive or dead. So right. That might be, I might be pushing that, but
I do it all the time. So, but whatever, but then we see a light off in the distance. He's crawling, holding his guts in, and he starts to try and yell very hoarsely, help, help, I'm over here. Because at that point, I think it doesn't even matter if it's the enemy or allies, like he's dead if somebody doesn't get him out of there. So,
Yeah.
and that's the flashback. And then he comes back in Louis, what would you call it? Not office, but well, whatever. I think that's the point too, like with the character, he just feels tired and exhausted and heavy and kind of slow. Like he's just, and so like these little moments of just temporary relief, as small as they are, or kind of the world to him. I mean, I guess it's the only thing can take any comfort in, because it's not a very comfortable movie, just visually. It's there aren't a
Right.
lot of nice places or people in it. So
The next thing that we as an audience get is daytime. He's doing his job as a postman, and then he's walking through this alleyway, and this car chases him down, almost hits him. He looks in the back seat of the car, and he calls them demons. Like it's like it's an odd face, and it's shaking, kind of like
yeah,
the soldiers were. It's just freaking him out, and like
well, then there's a guy that comes running out, and we see him later, but he's like, get out of the way, run, and like so before that happens, and the car comes
oh
barreling at
really?
him.
I missed that. I remember seeing him in the bar.
Yeah, no, I think that's the first time he appears here, is where he's like, get out of the way,
Okay.
and warns him of the car. But yeah, there's a lot of that. Just God, it's freaky as hell in this movie. The head shaking shit, and I forget what technique they used for that. Saw ripped it off many years later. A lot of that in here. It's really effective. Like it freaks the hell out of me. I don't know, every time I see
Yeah.
it. So
Yep.
so
He tells Jezebel about it, that he's getting like he sees demons,
mm.
and she's kind of just telling him not to worry about it, and
When the film
tells
starts,
him
I
to
think for
see
the
it.
first time, play around with the idea that, like she gets kind of this devious look on her, and starts to kind of scratch at his back, like she's like, do you
Mhm.
still love me, Jake? And he's like, what? And yeah, I mean, it's a very paranoid movie. So you get a lot of scenes like that, but, where it
And
goes back and forth.
and I think they decide that he's gonna go try to see a doctor. And
Oh yeah, Dr. Carlson, who we
yep,
apparently been seeing after he got back from Nam.
yep, he arrives in this VA hospital, I'd assume, to see Dr. Carlson, and they have no record of Dr. Carlson, and then they have no record of him either.
Mhm.
Um, and the nurse bends over, and her hat falls off, and he kind of sees like stumpy horns,
Yeah.
or like severed horns, and that spooks the shit out of him. So he's just thinking that like there's, again, like you said, very paranoid movie, like
Right.
demons everywhere for this guy. And then he learns that Carlson ended up dying in a car accident, and like the car actually blew up is what happened.
Yeah, nobody understands what happened. It's he can't get any more out of the one doctor, because he runs to the office, and yeah, Carlson's not there. Somebody else, there's like a support group going, so the doctor takes him outside, tells him Carlson died sometime around Thanksgiving, which is a little weird because there's no snow, and this is, but I mean, maybe, I don't know, because I'm thinking this has to be like December then. I forget. And then, but anyway, yeah. So it says the car explodes. It's a freak accident thing, and nobody really is sure. And
After that, like he goes back to Jez, and they talk about like, they kind of have like their similar sort of I'm seeing demons, and then she's like, get your mind off it, let's go to a party. And
right.
so they go to this party. um
Oh
and then this is one of the more famous scenes in the movie, basically. Well, we start off in the party where he's talking to this palm reader, and the palm reader like reads his whatever, I don't know the terms, there's like the heart line or something
the
like that.
lines of the, yeah. I don't.
I think there's either a heart line or a lifeline, whatever the hell they call it.
Right.
And she reads it, and at that point, there she was like, hey, according to your palm, you're already dead.
Right.
and it seems like a nut. Well, it's meant to seem like a nothing quote or whatever, but audiences might pick up on that. That's a clever like clue. And then she starts Jez and Jacob start dancing, and he starts like getting like you were mentioning earlier, the kind of like these flashes and seeing odd faces, shaking, stuff like that again. And he kind of like drifts off by himself, and Jez is dancing with a different guy. And then the guy starts to like morph in like into like this monster with this tail that wraps around her legs, and then
that's what I always thought. But then this time it looked like it was actually her that sprouted like wings, and I'm not actually sure. It's visually kind of confusing, so I don't know if
she definitely gets fucked by
that's the thing.
By a speared tail all the way out the mouth.
Yeah, it's so
so this is why it's a October Halloween marathon movie, people.
That's the thing. Like, it plays out a lot of the time just kind of like a thriller, but at other times like a drama. But I think the horrific imagery is so strong when it does appear. I think that's the other thing that makes it so effective, is that it's spaced out, but then when it's there, it's like full force.
It's a similar, I suppose, scare rate as like maybe like Sixth Sense.
I'd say it's way the hell scarier than Sixth Sense, but I mean, personally anyway. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't always feel like a horror movie, I think. So like, if people are expecting nonstop gore or whatever, it's not that kind of movie. It uses it for really strong punctuation, but there is enough of it where you can't really consider it anything like not horror. I don't know. I think it's interesting that way because the horror isn't omnipresent, and there are some really warm scenes, with his family and whatever. So I mean,
it's definitely psychological horror, not slasher horror, not ghost horror. Well, as you want to call them ghosts, but but you know what I mean. In what we perceive as the reality of the scene, Jez basically just sees Jacob like convulsing on the ground, like panicking, like the demons are around me, like shit like that. And then
he starts screaming. He just starts screaming his head off, and like I assuming passes out. So it looked like.
And then she drags him home, and he has a fever of 106, and they call the hospital. They're like, he won't survive an ambulance. You need to get him in a bath full of ice water right now. And she gets the neighbors to help put ice in him. And that's at least one of the scenes, one of the shots of him in the bath that, if like maybe made some trailers and made some posters. The posters, one criticism of the marketing of this movie would be I think objectively the posters aren't great.
I don't know if I've seen all the. I mean, unless you mean that.
Because there's like the one that's behind me, which is probably the best one I found. Kind of low quality, I know, as far as like the pixels and the whatnot. And then there's like, it's just like kind of like mid shaking head that we were talking about,
so and just blurred. A black background. I mean, I don't know. It's like
not the best poster, I don't think.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but it might draw you in, I guess. I mean, it's because again, I mean, maybe it communicates like the idea, because I don't know. It's a blurry face, nothing but blackness, red lettering. I mean, I guess it's representative of the movie. I mean, where you kind of have to do a double take at what you're even looking at. But most people, I don't know. They might get really curious, or they might just pass it up because they don't know what they're looking at, and it doesn't tell them much. I don't know. But yeah, then that looks like, I mean, the William Blake painting, I think, of Jacob's ladder, because it's in that he portrays it as stairs, and then that was something I was going to bring up at the end, because it's not actually a ladder that he goes up stairs.
So he passes out in the bath, and he's having another again dream trip. nightmare trip. He wakes up with his old wife, and it seems very real. They play the scene as though it were reality to really kind of get us stuck, like, because like he's like, I had a dream I was with another woman and I worked with her at a post office.
Right.
And then so it's like very believable.
Well, it's a woman that actually exists. I mean, he said his wife had met her at some party or whatever. But yeah, Jezebel from the post office. Well, and the other thing is that he says it's freezing, and because she's got the window open, and she's hogging all the covers, and and he's having ice poured on him in the previous scene. So I mean, those two things connect up.
His brain thinks he's cold even when he just has the fever.
But yeah, he says I'm freezing,
So that's why it's like torture when he goes into the ice bath.
Right. But then so he's talking to his wife and just kind of dismissing the whole thing as a dream, nightmare,
Yeah. And then his son, Macaulay Culkin, comes in, tucks him into bed, and then he wakes back up in the bath and asks, like, am I dead?
And that scene is like, that's probably my favorite scene in the film. Just, I mean, he's just being jerked around so much at this point in the film that just like, and I don't know, it's just a fantastic piece of acting from Tim Robbins there. But his face says everything. I mean, it's like, that's how you kind of feel as the audience, because it's, I think by that point in the film, you're completely lost. Like you don't know what the fuck's real. It kind of gets explained away a bit. The movie kind of does that. It'll like overextend and then kind of reel things back and try and give you an explanation, So here it's that, he's having a fever dream, and she says, oh, you were talking to your wife and your kids, even the dead one, and because you're and you melted 50 pounds of ice, and I think still, I mean, pretty upset. She's just glad he's alive, so she's kind of crying and stuff, and like he starts to get all hung up on the demonology, so he's going through all these books, and he won't leave the house, and she keeps telling him, leave the house. It's raining out, so she says, but go see a movie. He's not really listening to her. He's going through his books and whatever, and she's like, is there anybody home? Is there anybody there? And when she says that, her face turns like demonic looking, briefly, and he's like, who are you? And shoves her away, and well, that obviously pisses her off. Says she's sick of the shit. She storms out. He goes back to his books, and then he gets a call from
he gets a call from an old war buddy. And he meets this war buddy in a bar, and this is where we also see that one guy that we mentioned that was like, oh, watch out for the car.
You'll see him again very briefly, kind of just lingering in the background.
The war buddy, his eyes are like kind of like shaking. And you can definitely tell that that's just something that actor could do, like as a skill, because like my brother could do that for a while, where he could just make his eyes shake.
I know, like Brad Dourif can just like cry on command, so he does that in like almost every movie, which is okay because it's a great trick. Like he's, so it just is creepy as hell. Like in say like Legion or something, where he's just like telling these horrible stories, and you just see the tears like streaking down his face, but his expression's totally normal. Like I mean, it's eerie as hell.
Definitely a trick. It's not even like an emotional like click thing necessarily.
He did it with Rima Wormtongue and Two Towers, I think it was, and like X-Files. So I've seen him do it, but it never gets old because it's creepy as hell.
Yeah. Anyway, this war buddy, he's also seeing demons, so they're kind of relating there. And for the first time in the movie, Jacob has someone he can talk to that wants to talk back. But right away, when they get out of the bar, his war buddy gets into his car, starts the ignition, and it blows up. There was also some like weird stuff where Jacob found like a dime on the ground. He's like, oh, it's my lucky day. Yeah. And picked it up, and then that kept him from getting blown up. Plus, the guy with the glasses that's been lurking kind of pulls him out of the way of the blast.
And before Jacob can kind of gather himself, he's gone again, that guy. So, but if you couldn't tell, he becomes a play your, you know, later on in the movie. So yeah, so well then he goes to the funeral with Jezebel, meets up with his surviving war buddies, you know, that we saw at the start of the film, you know, Ving Rhames and all them.
And they all have the kind of have the experiences too. And they go
right.
to this movie kind of low key has a good cast, and I think that's part of what makes it a cult following is like the actors became more into their own as the 90s went on. Jason
Right. Yeah,
Alexander
Shawshank was just a few years out, like 93, right? With Shawshank.
Yeah, Shawshank,
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction didn't hit yet for
Mhm.
Ving Rhames, and then Jason Alexander. I don't think Seinfeld had started yet. If it had only just started.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that was later. So
Yeah, but Jason Alexander's in this. He plays a lawyer that they go to try to, you know, sue the government to, you know, be like they poisoned us or something. Like they had to. And
well, yeah, because they all, I mean, they all talk to each other at the what would you call that, after the funeral? But there's like a gathering, special, and they all sit to talk to each other. You know, Jacob was the last one to see him, so they asked what he was like, you know, and he said people were after him. He's seen demons. You can see everybody kind of gets hushed by that, you know, because like, you know, Rames's hands start shaking, and you know he's got to excuse himself, and so yeah, then they all start talking on a rooftop because they recognize that they're seeing the same stuff. So it's obviously not a coincidence. And then yeah, so they agree that, well, it must have been the army because nobody can remember that day where we started to spaz out, you know, like what even happened. So yeah, they hired the lawyer that you just described, and
the lawyer actually decided not to take their case because when he did some digging, he saw that you guys weren't even in Vietnam. Like you, and then he did some like kind of like talked about some stuff about like how like, you know, they barely like they're not even like on the books and yada yada yada. But he does quickly mention like some war games in Thailand. That's how he
oh,
the term he uses, war games in Thailand. Doesn't really go in specifics to that. So like we're as an audience led to believe that he may have gotten scared away by the level of like government sort of
oh yeah, well, we see that with
backing
because
here.
Jacob, before he goes to confront the lawyer, calls one of his war friends, and yeah, like you said, the implication is that they're scared off by, you know, something, the government presumably, you know, so they're obviously erasing his file, or you know, it is the implication. Then as soon as he leaves the I think the courthouse where he confronts a lawyer, he gets pulled into a car by two sort of like, I don't know, mafia looking dudes or something, you know.
Yeah, or like top secret government looking guys.
Right. Oh yeah, Men in Black. Sorry. Yeah, something like that. So
and in that scene, real quick, just one quote I pulled from it that stuck out to me was the army was a part of another life. So that's just an important
oh yeah, no, okay, that's
a
good.
significant
Yeah,
quote that came out in that car ride. And then yeah, he ends
so,
up stumbling out of the car ride and there's a Santa there.
well, it's almost ridiculous, and so like um you know, at this point in the movie, without seeing the rest of it, you might be like, wow, okay, this movie just got really bad because it is so. He gets in this big fight with the two guys, and they're like, which kind of doesn't really make sense to me unless he's hoping to overpower them so he can, because they were going to let him go. It seemed, as long as he'd shut up. But, so then he starts elbowing them and kicks the driver. They pull a gun, and you know, but whatever, he throws himself out of the car. But it just seems like, well, you know, if they weren't going to kill him, now they are. Or you know, but they speed off for whatever this is where I think logic and most things start to disintegrate very quickly, but that's deliberate, you know. So the movie isn't as quick to, you know, put out rational explanations for things. So anyway, yeah, he injures his back, can't move. Santa Claus, who apparently didn't just notice the car smashing off like everything down the street, whatever. because he's still ringing his bell, steals Jacob's wallet with the only surviving picture of his kid in it. I don't know if that's really relevant,
And
but
it's
whatever.
only ID. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh, right. That's why. Yeah, that's why it's important. So then they, so he's a no name at the hospital. Who's injured
yeah.
his
And
back.
this
Yeah.
hospital, I like, so my main note next to hospital, it's just my note is hospital and then shit's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because it's basically hell is where he's being like wheeled into.
Yeah. I mean, it gets gradually. Well, I mean, well, at first they're just like the most incompetent doctors ever. Where they're like moving him after he suffered a back injury. He passes out from a head injury, and they take him down to X-ray. And you'd think they'd, prioritize the head. I mean, but whatever. Anyway, but as he's being wheeled down to X-ray, well, it doesn't look anything like a hospital. It's all dilapidated. We see briefly crumpled up bike, wheels spinning or whatever, and he calls out his son's name. So I think that's a pretty clear indication that that's how his son died. A bicycle related accident, and then it gets just worse and worse. So then we're going through an asylum, which starts to, in your head, you're like, oh God, well, so is he just fucking crazy? I mean, yeah, well, I don't even know. I mean,
It keeps getting worse, and there's like a rooftop that's like a cage that people are like crawling on, and there's like amputees and fucking people shaking, and then all over the floor are just like severed limbs and stuff that they're just like rolling through. It's some creepy shit.
Yeah, that's like probably some of my favorite just horror imagery in anything. I mean, it's very
it stands out to me, honestly, and I'm not as like much of a horror lover as you, or a few other people I know, but like I've seen a lot of horror movies,
Yeah.
And it does kind of stand out as like, damn, that was just fucking creepy.
Right. But so that's why, I mean, if it had been like that, back to back, it wouldn't have the same kind of punctuation probably, So I think that's another, I mean, we do see some gore briefly at the start of the film where they're, bombs are going off and people, but even then it's kind of silhouetted. We don't really, so
yeah, they don't desensitize you to the horror too early. Like with some horror movies, it seems like by the time you're halfway through, you're like, all right, well, I can take anything at this point. It'll just be more of the same. I think that's what kind of like makes me not like slashers quite as much, just because like sometimes it is more of the same and doesn't really accelerate,
I mean, that's kind of one of my complaints of, say, like Hereditary. Like, I mean, you decapitated a child like 5 minutes into this. Not, it's a little later than that, but like, where do you go from there? I mean, it's like, so I feel like that's a big problem. And it just seems like common sense to me that like I was playing this fucking game Outlast 2, and literally 5 minutes in, you're walking over, like, it's not even a moment. Like, it's not like the game doesn't stop to, this is a tangent, but it just annoyed the hell out of me. Because like the game doesn't even stop to acknowledge it or make it into a scene. It just blows its load in the first 5 minutes. Literally, you're walking over the corpses of children. I'm like, okay, where do you go from there? I mean, it's like,
right. I feel like the best horror either does like a build up, right? It gets worse and worse and worse, or like it does a psycho thing. And I had learned
that was
I had like I was actually like watching a Hitchcock documentary recently. And he was talking about how he wanted like the biggest, okay, there's still some scary stuff at the end, like there's obviously a climax, right? So it doesn't totally just chill out in the second half of the movie, but the main scene, the big scares in the first half of the movie. And one of the things he always had in the back of his mind is that he's like, I can have this scare in this half of the movie and kill off the lead role, basically the lead billing, and then the rest of the movie, I don't necessarily even have to kill off a protagonist, or I don't have to do anything overly scary, because the audience is just gonna be like, anything can fucking happen. Anything can happen.
Isn't it just one other guy that gets it? The guy that goes down the stairs? I mean,
Yeah, the guy that goes down the stairs. And then
but I mean, yeah, no, I get what
there's a
you're
very big scare at the end when we meet the mother.
right. Yeah, here in Jacob's Ladder, it's like, it's like, well, I guess we kind of said it. It's yeah, it's not nonstop. It really it takes a while to get to the next horrific image or whatever, but I think it helps it stand out all the more because of that. So, but anyway, so while he's in the hospital, that's the other thing that's in plain sight is, I mean, it's, the movie just straight up says your dad, like,
yep, they're on an operating table. Jez is a doctor and they're doing brain surgery, and they say like, oh, you're dead, you died in Vietnam, like, and then just, and then the scene
and it's such a helpless scene too, because I mean, he's strapped into this thing and he's like, this isn't happening, and he's like, what is happening? He's like, I don't know. I mean, he's like, you're dead. He's like, I'm not dead. Then how do you explain what this? And it's, I mean, he's like, I don't know. It's just, I mean, I think psychologically just wearing him down, because there is no explanation, and it's just a miserable scene. He's completely helpless, and then he wakes up in the hospital. His wife and kids visit him. The wife starts to hug him up, even though they're divorced or whatever. She's like, I still love you, which is when he asked, or maybe no, wait, I think he said as much. When he's talking to Louis the first time we meet Louis, I guess the wife must also see Louis, so yes, about Sarah, and he says, she says you're a son of a bitch, and she regrets the day she ever met you, and he says that means she's still in love with you, and then she says here in this scene that I still love you, Jake, and then we hear off screen a voice which is say dream on,
and then the scene changes, but we're still in a hospital.
Right.
And then the chiropractor storms in. He said, where's Jake? And then he takes him out. And like okay, this is what I wanted to talk about chiropractors, because it's just a funny thing to me that has nothing to do with the movie, because it works in the movie. But sure. Like I'm just like, in what crazy upside down world is a chiropractor having clearly more moral authority over a hospital? It is, granted, in this story, a super fucked hospital and a really nice chiropractor, but this is the only way I can imagine that happening.
A lot of people feel that way. I know, like, that I've talked to, where like they do feel like a chiropractor provides them more relief than any doctor actually has. I mean, I guess, I mean, I sympathize with that. I mean, to some degree. Yeah, I think a lot of people go in and they just kind of get spat right back out. It's like, well, see me in 2 more weeks if you're not dead, and like, I mean, so and that's just kind of the attitude. So unless you got what the fuck, not clot too.
I've heard, like, I mean, these are expensive as hell, but I've heard like you're better off going for a physical therapist, because they get a lot more training than chiropractors. Like, they might not be doctors, but they get a lot, their training is a lot more involved in how.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, that's probably, but like you said, it's very expensive. So
right, because and sometimes when your back is fucked up, it's a muscle thing, and that's when a chiropractor is not going to help with that. Like a masseuse could, maybe, but like, that's like, you need physical therapy, but expensive as hell. Right. So that's a super aside. Yeah, just something that like broke.
No, but I get it. But I do think that's kind of how people look at their chiropractors, though. I mean, just because they do, unlike a doctor, you do get an immediate relief, even if it doesn't last, even if maybe it's some witch doctor-ness, whatever. There is that immediate relief, and I think people appreciate that.
And then the chiropractor takes him back to his office, and they have a really long scene where, again, he's just relieving him, soothing him. And a quote I pulled from that scene was, "The only thing that burns in hell are your memories."
Yeah.
And then I believe that leads into the quote, about the angels.
No, you're right. Yeah, the only thing that burns in hell are your memories and the things that you're trying to hold on to. So, so if you're fighting, to stay alive, then,
Then your
then
angels become demons.
right.
But
That
if
are,
you let go, those same people will be your angels.
right. Yeah, they're demons tearing away at you, but yeah, if you let go, then they're angels freeing you, lifting you.
Which is
So
honestly a really like fascinating thought.
oh,
Like, you know, I mean,
yeah,
like just object like it's a very smart movie, especially like with its like philosophy for sure. Like I don't think it's the most well directed or shot or pretty horror movie ever, but it's well acted and there's a lot of like decent fucking philosophy in it that's like, you know,
it's
that you
it's
don't
a
see
movie
in every
that
horror.
I didn't appreciate the directing the first time I saw it. I thought it was kind of messy. But like the more times I watch it, like the more I like just like it. So a lot of that's
Okay.
kind of faded away. But I felt it's interesting though that I felt similarly the first time I ever watched it. Like I wasn't terribly.
And that's kind of like a cult trend because this is a cult movie where
Yeah,
like it barely made its money back. I looked like its box office and its budget. It made like $1 million, which good for it. It did its job,
yeah,
but just by the skin of its teeth. But like it's become like more popular as the years have gone on because its cast was a big deal. It's pretty thought provoking. Yeah, so like that's just kind of like a cult theme too, where the more you watch it, the better it gets. That's, you know,
yeah.
we talk about that with a lot of movies, and that's why we kind of like to wait a little bit to do, you know, movies that are a little older, like at least 5 years old. I know we've broken that rule once or twice. Still, like, you know, just to see how these movies age, because some movies just will not age. Like you know, you just don't really care. But some other movies, you're like, how did we miss this one?
A weird phenomenon was like Event Horizon. I'd seen that as a kid, totally fucked me up. I revisited it in I think 2015, and I was like, oh, it's kind of bad. But then I kept watching it, and that became like great again, all over again to me. And then like I just became obsessed with it. I love the movie now, but I could, but it's flawed. But
But yeah, the chiropractor ends that scene with the suggestion like, make peace, Jacob. So then after the Louis scene, he's looking through old photos of the war and he has a flashback to his kid's death. So we actually see that a little more in detail of him like
yeah,
pushing
it's
his
sad the
bike
way that
across the
plays
street.
out because it's just, he drops his cards in the street and he's kind of fumbling with the bike trying to pick him up, and
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
so
he's not even being like reckless with a bike or anything.
right.
Um and then we get like, this is like a big part of the movie where that guy with the glasses that's been kind of following him around shows up again, or calls actually,
Yeah,
and then against Jazz's wishes, Jacob goes to see him. So this guy with the glasses that, you know, has been following him around, kind of trying to like save him here and there, or trying to like
right.
watch over him, wants to meet him in person, and he reveals that he was like this fucking really smart like hippie chemist back in the day. And he was like, oh, I just made my craziest like version of acid ever,
Right.
my craziest batch of acid ever. Then I got caught and I was going to go to prison, but they were like, hey, how about you work for the military and put these chemicals together. And they wanted to make like a super agitating compound that would make basically humans like just like way more aggressive and all that. And they tested it on monkeys, and the monkeys like ripped each other apart and just did really fucked up things. And then they tested it on humans, and he said they were even worse.
Yeah, he said Vietnam POWs, and that's just a great scene where he's like, I did sort of just it's yeah, like I don't know. And and this whole conversation's happening in like this, kind of burnt out building. So it just kind of adds to the
Mhm.
way he tells the story, though. It gives you shivers. It's like I didn't know men could do those
And the
things,
humans they tried it on were actually like POW Viet Cong, I believe,
Yeah,
is what
that's what
they
he
said.
says. Yeah. So Just a bunch of kids and,
the first Americans they tried it on was Jacob's battalion.
right.
And he explains that like you guys went crazy and killed each other. And then Jacob gets the flashback to the stabbing and realizes that it was one of his like army men. It was an American soldier that bayoneted him.
Right.
So this is when it kind of all comes together, and he returns to his old home. In short, this it's a more like slowly and meaningfully paced out scene, but like you can only really explain in a couple sentences. Returns home to his old home, like the
Where he
one
was living with Sarah and the kids,
with his wife and his kids, and his son Kelly Culkin
Yep.
uh takes him by the hand and leads him up a stairway to heaven, basically. And we get the flashback of him dead in a medical tent in Vietnam. And then before the end credits show up, it says that it was reported that a compound called BZ was used on soldiers, but the government denied it. I did some Googling. It looked like it could have been a couple of different compounds that I like Googled. They didn't seem very similar. They seemed more like we would use it on like to be used on an enemy to like make their reaction slower rather than use it on us to make us more aggressive.
Yeah, I think it was something they threw together in the 50s, and then like they wanted to, because it was supposed to apparently heighten aggression, but same as kind of the movie, but not like nothing like that from anything I read, but like I don't even know if we used it at all ever. But or at least as the movie says, that's the claim. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really remember.
And then just the imagery of going up the staircase. What did you think of that, Dakota? Because there's
right.
There.
I think I talked about the William Blake stairway or whatever, and so stairway to heaven, like you said.
Yeah. There's the stairway, and then if you look at like the story of Jacob's ladder in the Bible, I only looked at it briefly, but it's basically Jacob made a ladder to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
it appeared in a dream or whatever, and
it's basically like his way of climbing out of this like sunken place, almost, you know what I mean, and
right,
into heaven. Like that's what he had to do. That was his journey,
Mm-hmm. The other thing, the drug was called the ladder. We left that out. The chemist called and the explanation was, it might be a little strained, but the explanation was just that it was a trip down the ladder to the primal fear, like whatever. So is how he describes. And then when he goes up the stairs, the light from I think a window or whatever, it's a fade to white, and then we see a lamp. It opens on the image of a lamp, medical lamp or whatever. I was just thinking that's, we see the lamp behind Louis or whatever that casts that kind of halo effect image, so it's probably him just incorporating, things that he's seeing half conscious on the medical table into this mass hallucination. So obviously the ending raises a bunch of questions. I mean, about how much was real, how much wasn't.
I think literally the only real scenes were the Vietnam scenes.
Well, yeah, but then
and then other stuff is, well, I suppose some of the flashbacks, like the kids' death and like the original family. I think Louis and to me, Louis and Jez are angels that he manufactured in his head. Because like, if you could imagine being a soldier dying, like even just without like this like psycho like chemical stuff, it's an interesting thought experiment to see what would my life be like if I had survived war.
So I don't know if they're if it's more of a spiritual concept that he's seeing sort of a flash forward of or whatever, if it's like
that's what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that it crossed my mind. I mean, I think the whole like it's in any case, the dream is what his life is made of, the people that matter to him, the things that are important, his family and whatever. So it's all kind of just jumbled up. So, but yeah, I get like the specifics of what's real. I mean, did he ever actually meet Jezebel even? Because he wouldn't have been working at the post office as far as I mean, he had a doctorate and then he only went to work at the post office after. So yeah, like Louis might have been real possibly. I mean, because it sounds like his wife and him, they both see Louis. I mean, like that's their chiropractor.
Yeah.
So yeah, he might be real if Jezebel's just an idea of like fleshly desire to keep him there on Earth. I don't know. She could be a total fabrication. She's the most likely to be, because it just otherwise doesn't make sense, like you kind of pointed out. Yeah, it's and then was the whole drug thing real? I mean, again, I don't see how it could be, but or I mean, because then how is he, unless he's psychic, aware of this? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That gets complicated, I guess. But I was gonna say there's a really great deleted scene that I love that happens after he meets the chemist and before the very end. It got cut for being too disturbing or something, but it eases into that ending because it might feel a little abrupt to people, where the chemist rids him of the demons. But before that, there's just this horrific scene of like this, well, I don't even know what the hell you'd call it. I mean, breaking through the ceiling tiles in the room and blood's just pouring, and he's writhing around. It's disturbing, but I loved it. So it's a shame it got cut. But then after that, he's, calm washes over him. And then I think that transitions into that ending a bit.
That might have been, that sounds like that could have been maybe a better juxtaposition there.
Yeah, because it is a little sudden otherwise. Well, yeah, so I guess that about covers it. I definitely say it's worth watching that scene. You can find it on YouTube, I think, in good quality. Or, I mean, obviously on the disc if you own it. But
as far as place in society, we've kind of mentioned how has like quite the cult following. I definitely see how it does have that cult following. Like we mentioned, it's got a pretty solid cast, pretty smart ideas. Seems like a movie. The more you watch, the more you like it. Those are all ingredients for a good cult movie. So if you want to watch a good cult movie on a Halloween marathon or leading up, or you just like horror movies, I would recommend this one. It's pretty good.
Yeah, certainly. Here, other recommendations really quick. And there's a remake for the record with what's his name, Michael Ealy. He's in one of my favorite shows, Sleeper Cell, and Jesse Williams. Came out like 3 years ago. It's not a remake, it's not a reboot, it's like a retelling of the story, but it shifts a lot of elements. But the thing that it's not very good. I thought I was going to hate it, and it is not good, and don't probably watch it. But I couldn't totally bring myself to hate it either. It had some interesting ideas in there. It even had some very disturbing imagery, but it's not in terms of like when it shows you that this is just like a 2-second review of it, just to spare anybody that's like disturbing imagery, but the timing is totally off and it doesn't work. So, it's just not very effective as a horror movie. It was really, I was really ahead of it in terms of like the twists and turns. And it also doesn't really have any greater meaning, like this movie was kind of trying to go for.
It doesn't bring anything new to it either.
No, but it had interesting ideas. It could have been a good movie if better executed. And then let's see. So Perfect Blue, I keep bringing that one up, but again, it's very disorienting in the way that like Jacob's Ladder is. Let's see. It's definitely a psychological horror film.
I'd say maybe Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense, very good M. Night movie. Another recommendation, maybe like Fatal Attraction or Unfaithful, if you want to like round out some Adrian Lyne in your life. Another 1990 film about ghosts, also written by Bruce Joel Rubin.
Yep.
Ghost, because
Yep.
oddly enough, those are the same writer. I don't know. It's kind of a very dissimilar horror movie to a lot of them that I've seen.
I mean, that's why I like it so much. Yeah, because there's not too much else like it.
Fuck it, go with some Hitchcock. Like any Hitchcock's good.
I mean, I guess Black Swan again, maybe could be, and then let's just see, any Twilight Zone episode. I mean, basically, but yeah, let's see. William Peter Blatty's the last, oh God, the Ninth Configuration. Blatty had written The Exorcist, but yeah, Ninth Configuration is not really a horror movie, but still, I think that would be one that people would dig. Maybe Shutter Island.
And then out of 5 stars, what are you going to give it, Dakota?
A 4 for me personally. Like at this point, it's a 5, but for everybody, yeah, a 4.
I'm thinking between 3.5 or 4. I'm probably going to go 3.5 again, but that's just because it's the first time I watched it, and I know it's a cult following movie. So the second time watching it, I might like it more, and I might move up to a 4. You know what I mean? So
right, no, yeah, no, that's fair. So all right,
that's how I feel a lot about these movies. Like, yeah, but this one specifically, I feel like has like recipes to, yeah, I might get into it again because I don't know, like, not that I have TV anymore, but like if it were on TV, and it were on, I would finish it. You know what I mean? I'm Nate. He's Dakota. Good hanging out with you today. Hope you like this movie, and check out our Spotify if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, check out our Spotify. We're also on any other site that has podcasts. Take a look at our Patreon if you're interested, if you can afford it. Not asking for miracles or anything, but like whatever you could do would be much appreciated, but no biggie if you can't. I mean, it's a economic crisis out there. So expectations are low, but we have it. Check out our Instagram and Twitter, that we post some stuff on there sometimes. But yeah, just have a good day. Later, dudes.